Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me again. We pre-recorded this yesterday, but there were sound issues, so we are re-recording it again tonight. It is the same exact layout. Everything that's being discussed yesterday is being discussed again, and we're not adding anything new. It's just for the sound quality, which we're hoping will be better with this little green mic here. So without further ado, the repost begins now. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me again. Although this was pre-recorded, tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, we'll be having a live discussion to go over the case of Amy Lynn Bradley, who has been missing since 1998. But in advance of this, we will be discussing the backstory, things that have changed since I first started researching this case many years ago, the timeline, the theories, the sightings, the picture, and my personal belief of what happened before I hear yours. I encourage you to do your own research because this is broad strokes and I am not going into the nitty-gritty of everything. I will be discussing things present on Wikipedia and in the recently released 3-part series, Amy Bradley is Missing on Netflix. But if you don't have Netflix, there are many other videos and articles discussing this case. This is just a reminder. This is not a deep dive. This is more of a rundown of things that we could possibly discuss Wednesday night. Also, I am obviously reading from a script stationed below me, so please forgive the looks downward. Part 1, backstory. Ron Bradley, Amy's father, who had won an all expenses Caribbean cruise through his employer. It was exclusively for him and his wife, Iva, but he paid extra to include Amy and her younger brother, Ron, whom everyone called Brad. They flew from Virginia to Puerto Rico to board Rhapsody of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean International cruise ship, on the afternoon of Saturday, the 21st of March, 1998. The ship was bound for several stops in the Caribbean, including Curacao, a Dutch island off the coast of Venezuela. Amy, a 23-year-old recent graduate from Longwood University and a strong swimmer with lifeguard training, had recently accepted a new job with a computer consulting company and was due to start upon returning home. She had also recently adopted a puppy, and again, she was 23 years old. There were some reports from Amy's friends that she was nervous about the trip and apprehensive about being so far out in the ocean that she could no longer see land. But her brother, Brad, has said with conviction that he saw no signs of apprehension or hesitation in the days leading up to the cruise, just excitement. Both can be true. Perhaps Amy was putting on a brave face for her family, but was a touch more honest with her friends. We may never know. Part 2, the timeline. Saturday, March 21st, 1998. The Rhapsody of the Seas leaves Puerto Rico for the first port of call, Aruba. Monday, March 23rd, 1998. The Rhapsody of the Seas spends the day in Aruba and at the end of the day departs for Curacao. That evening, Amy and Brad attended a dance party on the ship's disco on Deck 9. The calypso band Blue Orchid was performing. Amy was photographed and videotaped dancing closely with one of the band's members, Alistair Douglas. His nickname was Yellow, and that is how we will address him going forward. Tuesday, the 24th of March, 1998, Amy disappears. According to ship records and family accounts, events unfolded as follows. 1 a.m. Yellow claimed he left the nightclub party at this time. 3:35 a.m. Brad returned to the family cabin. His key card was logged electronically. This is a good time to mention there is no way for key cards to log when people leave the room. 3:40 a.m. Amy followed 5 minutes later. Her key card also electronically logged her return to the cabin. She and Brad sat talking on their private balcony before Brad went to bed. Amy stayed outside a while longer. She was smoking, maybe Brad was too, but she was definitely smoking. Between 5:15 and 5:30 a.m., Ron Bradley sees his daughter Amy for the last time. Ron awoke briefly and looked out at the balcony. He stated he could see Amy's legs stretched out on the lounge chair and assumed she was asleep. He closed his eyes again. Between 5:30 a.m. and 5:45 a.m., witnesses reported seeing Amy on the upper deck. There were 3 of them. 2 were together. Their names were Lori and Crystal. Lori is the one we're going to primarily focus on because she was featured in the Netflix show on camera, and her account was that she and the other witness couldn't sleep and decided to go to the upper deck around 5:30 a.m. Just a note that both of these women were 18 at the time. At 5:30 a.m. on the upper deck, they saw Amy and Yellow take a glass elevator together to the club, which was closed. Well, this, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. She later saw Yellow walk briskly by her and her friend alone at 6 a.m. The reason she remembers this is because previously Yellow had been trying to chat her and her friend up, and she believed when she saw him coming quickly towards them, he would try again, seeing as this time they were alone. This is why she remembers it was Yellow so clearly. Also, in the Netflix special, there is a picture Lori took with her friends, and Yellow is seated nearby in the background with his hand blocking his face like this, but it was verified to be Yellow. I have read in some reports that Lori and Crystal said that Amy had a camera and that Yellow handed her a brown drink before going in the elevator. But Lori did not mention either of these 2 details in her portion on the Netflix show. The third witness was not identified in any way, gender, age, etc., and was not affiliated with Lori and her friend. This was a completely different witness with a completely separate account. I have read in other reports that attribute the camera and brown drink details to this witness instead. So I'm not really sure. Again, there are accounts that Lori and Crystal accounted for the camera and brown drink, but Lori did not mention those in the Netflix special. And I have read accounts that the third witness, who has no identifying details, was the one who mentioned she had a camera and that Yellow handed her a brown drink before they got into the elevator. 6 a.m., Amy is gone. Ron woke up again and noticed Amy was no longer on the balcony. Her shoes were still on the balcony, but her cigarettes and lighter were missing. He begins searching the ship. 6:30 a.m., the family alerts the ship staff. After searching on his own, Ron woke Iva and Brad and reported Amy missing. The family immediately asked crew members to prevent passengers from disembarking and to make an emergency announcement. Their request to delay disembarkation was denied, and they were told it was too early to make an announcement. 7:50 a.m., first public announcement is made. The ship broadcasted a message. Will Amy Bradley please report to the purser's desk? By this time, passengers had already begun disembarking for the day's port of call in Curacao. Between 12:15 and 1 p.m., crew members conducted a full ship search, but no sign of Amy was found. Between the 24th and 27th of March, 1998, Coast Guard search fails to locate Amy. The Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard conducted a 4-day aerial and sea search around the waters near Curacao using helicopters and a radar-equipped plane. No trace of Amy was found. Royal Caribbean chartered a private boat to continue the search after the official effort ended. Next up, now versus then. I've been following this case for years. I'm talking about between 10 and 15 years. And since then, several things have changed. I will refer to them as BC and AD. BC is when I was following the case years ago. AD refers to the things people are primarily saying now. The first and most prominent change is that in BC, there was no mention that Amy was gay. Whether the family decided to keep it private or it was viewed as just too much of a stigma 15 years ago, when I first was reading about this, her homosexuality was speculated on, but never confirmed. The reason this matters so much is because in BC, I believe that Amy killed herself. I thought being 23, it was going to become harder to try to hide her true identity from her conservative parents. Plus, though people say she had so much to look forward to, a new job, a new puppy, all these friends, The stories and history of suicide prove time and time again we cannot predict who will commit this act simply by outside and perceived factors. Paul 2.0, an AOA community member who had seen the special before I did, told me that Amy being gay was now a fact and that she had come out to her parents. And he was right. While her parents were, their words, disappointed, they did not disown her. They were not fighting, and there wasn't even a change in the temperature of the family dynamic. And this changed my perception quite a bit. Also in BC, the following things are now different from the way I had learned them. Number one, in BC, I was told since her shoes were on the balcony and all of her other shoes had been accounted for, Amy must have been barefoot when she went missing. This has since been changed to the family not exactly being sure of how many pairs of shoes Amy traveled with. Number two, I had definitely heard that Royal Caribbean assured the family that a thorough search had been made, but once the FBI got involved, they changed their statement that only the common areas and crew area were thoroughly searched. The Netflix special, in my opinion, made it seem as if a very thorough search was done initially, and I am still not sure exactly what happened in this portion of the case. Number three, in BC, the story I heard was that post Amy disappearing, Royal Caribbean tried to erase her so as not to disturb the passengers. I heard any flyers put up were taken down and that all the pictures in the photo gallery had been removed. The photo gallery part is actually more sinister in AD. Pictures of Amy had been removed while Amy was still on the ship, something that Amy and her mother discovered while in the photo gallery. Also, I heard in subsequent reports that are now prevalent these days that Royal Caribbean did allow flyers to be put under doors, and there were flyers posted with Amy, that Amy was missing, and that quite a few people on the ship knew about this. Number four, in BC, all the witness reports were accounted for. I've heard of all of them before, but now in AD, the three people who saw Amy on the deck is with yellow holding a camera is new. Back in BC, the camera was perceived missing completely. And we'll get into more of that later in the video. And number five, of course, if you saw the Netflix documentary, Yellow's daughter had an account of what happened. She said that her father came home and that her mother, who was married to him at the time, said he came back different from that trip, and that she had found photos from the photo gallery of women in his suitcase. And none of that was available before. Obviously, Yellow's daughter was just a young girl, almost a baby, when this happened. I'm going to go a touch out of order and do the sightings next. Sightings. On the 24th of March, a cab driver claimed to see Amy on the island of Curacao. The morning the ship docked in Curacao, so that morning, a local taxi driver, he didn't tell them that morning, but a local taxi driver told the Bradleys that he had seen a barefoot young woman matching Amy's description, frantically searching for a phone the morning that the ship docked in Curacao. Now, this account is important and especially interesting because it incorporates the idea that Amy's shoes were on the balcony, so she may have not put on new shoes after this, and she was indeed barefoot. It's just an interesting detail because, as we said, we didn't know if she was barefoot at the time, and this cab driver noted this woman who looked like Amy was indeed wearing no shoes. In August 1998, tourists reporting seeing Amy on a beach in Curacao. 2 Canadian divers reported seeing a woman resembling Amy at Playa Porto Marie. She appeared to be with 2 men and was acting as though she wanted to speak to the divers, but was prevented from doing so. The woman's tattoo and watch matched Amy's known features. This will also be discussed later in the video. January 1999, U.S. Navy officer said Amy approached him. William Hefner, a retired Navy officer, reported that a woman identifying herself as Amy Bradley approached him at a brothel in Curacao and pleaded for help. The FBI later investigated, but found the building had since burned down. April 2003. Witnesses saw a woman matching Amy's description in San Francisco. She appeared frightened, and 2 men noticed she had been recognized and forcibly took her away. March 2005, a witness in Barbados reported seeing a woman in a department store restroom who whispered her name was Amy, and she was accompanied by several men and appeared distressed. In this account, the witness mentioned Amy asking the two men if they could see the children before they leave. Also in 2005, Amy's parents received an email with 2 images of a woman known as Jazz featured on a sex worker site. The woman resembled Amy. Facial recognition experts later stated the photos were highly likely to be Amy, though the FBI could not confirm their authenticity. This will most likely be a topic of discussion on Wednesday, if I may make a prediction. We cannot show it here, but please view the picture of Jazz, spelled Jas, for yourself to see if you think it is Amy or not. January 2007, another report placed Amy at a restaurant in Aruba, dining with 4 unidentified men. No other information is known. And in 2010, a human jawbone washed ashore in Aruba. Authorities initially tested it to link the jawbone to the Natalie Holloway case, but declined to conduct DNA testing for Amy Bradley or any other missing individuals. 12 years to the day after her disappearance, a court officially declared Amy Lynn Bradley dead. Investigators have never recovered any physical remains. Now for the most prominent theories. Theory 1, overboard. There are 2 separate theories under the overboard umbrella. The missing camera played a big part in the first one. This theory was that Amy took off her shoes, got up on a small table that was pushed up against the far wall of the balcony, tried to take a picture of the ship coming into the port at Curacao, and fell overboard. Her father describes getting up early for no particular reason at 6 a.m. with no alarm to wake him, with some at the time thinking that what actually woke him was the sound of Amy falling into the water. And while it was reported by friends that Amy was nervous of being out in the ocean where she could not see land, this is a place where she could very clearly see land, so she may have been bolder about being close to the edge of the balcony than she was while they were at sea. And her camera, cigarettes, and lighter were all missing. We will get more into the missing camera with theory 3, but as for now, the overboard theory poses that she had her cigarettes and lighter in her pocket, she was holding the camera to take a pic, and went overboard. Another smaller school of thought is that Amy had been drinking all night and then smoking with her brother. She went into the cabin to get ready for bed. The yellow shirt she was wearing that evening was left on the arm of a chair, suggesting she took it off. When she felt sick from the boat's motion, coming into shallower waters, she opened the balcony door, she stepped onto the table, she threw up, the ship hit a bump, she went overboard, and her father woke up. Theory 2, she jumped. We kind of already covered this one. Back in BC, it was honestly what I thought. I just believe the timeline was too tight for her to be seen by her father around 5:30 and missing at 6. Another odd piece of evidence that lends credence to both theory 1, overboard, and theory 2 of jumping is the open balcony door. The notice on the back of all doors containing a balcony state that a balcony door should be closed before the door to the hallway is opened, or else you risk creating a bit of a whirlwind or like a mini tornado in the room itself. The testimony of the family was that the balcony door was open, not fully, but open. If she had left it open and then went out into the hall, Brad would have probably been awoken by the tiny windstorm that would have occurred. The boat was still moving at this time. So there are some who believe she never opened the door to the hallway. In other words, she went over and never opened the door to the hallway. Which brings us to the meatiest theory, theory 3, she was trafficked. There is much to support this theory. However, after going over the Wikipedia entry and the Netflix special, I may be wrong. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. Okay. So the evidence of trafficking. There were the missing pictures of Amy and Yellow's then wife finding similar pictures in Yellow's suitcase. There's Yellow's inconclusive lie detector test. There's an account of Brad waiting outside while his parents are speaking to the FBI, only to have Yellow walk by and tell him, "Sorry about your sister." Some speculate while the Bradleys were speaking with the Royal Caribbean staff of their concerns, a covert order to clean the room was given. That's just speculation. That's just what people are saying. The point is, the room was cleaned during that time. While they were talking to the FBI, the room was cleaned. Now, that could just be because no one was in the room, and that's typically when they clean, or the Royal Caribbean was trying to make sure that, I don't know, but that's just part of the theories of what happened with the trafficking, the fact that evidence was destroyed because Royal Caribbean was trying to cover their tracks, and there was very little evidence to be found after that cleaning. Also, some say, again, complete speculation, this is when the camera was taken out of the room. It's hard to tell. But then there are sightings that keep happening. The man on the deck identified her tattoo. Now, this is another BC-AD situation. Back in BC, it was reported that the man saw a special on TV and called in and mentioned the tattoo of the Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball. In AD, it has been revealed through the Netflix special that the man saw the report. It contained the description of the tattoo, and that's when he remembered Amy and called in. The reason I say this is because I believe that despite me thinking that the initial theory of her unaliving herself, I could never explain away this man's account of her tattoo, which is very specific. But now I've learned that he didn't come up with the idea of the tattoo, a description of the tattoo unprompted. He had heard about it on the TV and then remembered Amy. I am not saying this man is lying. I'm only saying that back in the day, people who researched this case, it was reported many, many times that he came up with the tattoo, not he heard about the tattoo and remembered her. It's quite a difference. But again, I'm not saying he's lying. I just remember there being more stock in his testimonial in BC. There's also the picture of Jazz. There's a camp of people who believe that is absolutely her, and there's a camp that can't, won't, or don't believe it. It's a really heartbreaking picture. It's also in one of the most divisive pieces of this case. Many people believe it is absolutely her, and there is so much speculation that it is not. We'll probably talk about that on Wednesday. There is so much to help support the trafficking theory, and I suspect this will be another thing that we can dive into on Wednesday. And now for the two final theories I didn't think to include when Anthony was making the rundown menu for me. The first is a rather dark one that is much more prevalent than when I was researching this case a decade or so ago. For some reason, there are many more people around today expressing the possibility that her family was involved. The short timeline, the short timeline can be explained by her family unaliving her themselves because of her recent revelation of her sexuality going against the family's expectations. Again, the only thing I can see supporting it is the small timeline. Family sees her at 5:30, but decides at 6 that she is missing. If you haven't guessed, that is a detail that has always bothered myself. I can't explain that away in any theory. The very, very short timeline between 5:30 seeing her and 6 a.m. deciding that she's missing, even though the ship is large. And that's the conclusion that they came to. Again, none of the theories really concretely explain that away. But I don't know if a family that has participated in the search of their own daughter would spend decades trying to publicly find her. It seems as if you are the culprit, why draw attention? It seems very strange to me that people think that they would unalive their daughter and then spend so much time and money trying to get a spotlight on her case. And speaking of the Bradley family, the final theory is Amy's family's hope that she is alive. Families, most notably mothers of missing children, have a history of sensing the time when there is no more hope, with many being proven correct. In many of these cases, there is a sense or a feeling of their child being permanently gone. And again, many of these nebulous, otherworldly senses prove to be right across many missing child cases. Mrs. Bradley has said that she has never experienced this gossamer cosmic confirmation and still believes her daughter to be alive. This is also supported by new information revealed in episode 3 of the Netflix series of a URL address that keeps visiting the website Amy Bradley is missing on days important to the family. The question posed is who else but Amy would be visiting and staying so long on the site on these days which only she would know. So there is a faction of people who believe Amy is still alive, perhaps not even trafficked, just living her life, or remaining quiet to keep safe the children she may have had over time or the family searching for her in America. These are all things we can speak of on Wednesday. We can talk about any aspect you guys wish. But before we go, I would like to share my theory. Now, there is no theory that is not controversial. Every theory has holes. No explanation is airtight, thus the enduring, horrific mystery. But without further ado, this is what I believe myself at this point. I believe Yellow was working for a trafficking network that thought there was an untapped market for victims in cruise ships. I believe with the international law, the chance that she could just be noted as falling overboard and other aspects we're not even thinking of, that taking a woman off a cruise ship every once in a great while would be a new way to procure women to be trafficked. I think they tried it. I think the two-person sighting of Yellow and Amy going up to the dance club and him returning home is when it happened. The elevator to the nightclub was a glass one, and the witness, Lori, saw Amy and Yellow go into the nightclub from the elevator, even though the club was closed, and I sadly think that is where the handoff occurred. The only sighting we discussed that I believe could be true is the first one, the morning the ship docked by the taxi driver. Perhaps athletic Amy got away from her captor, went looking for a phone, only to be immediately recaptured. But I don't even fully believe that theory. Sadly, I think the trafficking ring underestimated how the FBI and the family of a missing girl in America would never give up. I think once the heat was on, they killed Amy and abandoned any future attempts, discovering exactly why cruise ships were an untapped well. There's a reason why this operation would not work. I think they tried it with Amy. It didn't work, and they never tried it again. This is also why I believe Yellow's lie detector test may have been inconclusive. We don't know what questions he was asked, and we don't know his answers. But in my theory that I have in my head, I believe he was asked these questions. Just my belief. 1, did you kill Amy? And he could have truthfully said no. 2, did you harm Amy? And he could have truthfully said no, with harm being in the most specific, narrow definition of the term. And 3, do you know what happened to Amy? And again, if he could convince himself that after he did the handoff, he does not concretely know what happened to Amy, he could truthfully answer no. Again, these are not questions that are asked, but these are ways that I believe that his parts of his lie detector could show deception and parts could show truth. Again, all me. As for these other sightings, I sadly think that perhaps women of similar, horrible, and desperate fate over the years heard of the missing Amy Bradley and used her name in hopes of rescue. I believe those who think they saw her truly think they did. I don't think it is her in the picture. I don't believe she's been seen since 1998. I don't believe she is alive. But since yesterday, I have been seeing comments and I have heard a couple of things. One, someone in the comments wrote that Yellow in his post interviews has shown a truth, a profile of truth telling. which is very interesting and hopeful. And also many more people that I've talked to about the case in the past day have been going with the overboard theory, just falling overboard, which is interesting because back in BC, there was so many more people who believed the trafficking theory. And now I feel there's more evidence for the trafficking theory and the pendulum has swung back. So many more people are saying overboard. It's just, there's no accounting for it. I have no idea why. But that's the majority of new thought. New thought is definitely, there's an uptick in the overboard theory. But to conclude, I am very into true crime. Maura Murray, Madeleine McCann, Brandon Lawson, Jody Huizentrout, Jennifer Kesse, Zeb Quinn, whose case has actually been solved, and John Benet Ramsey. All cases where you put together the puzzle and there are pieces missing. But this case is different for me. This case does not have missing pieces. This is a puzzle that when you put together the complete picture, you look to the side and there are pieces that are left over that don't go anywhere, despite the fact that you put together a complete picture. They just don't fit. The theory I gave doesn't explain the open balcony door. It doesn't explain the missing camera. And I will always find it too odd to believe that her father saw her on the balcony at 5:20 in the morning, and then she was trafficked by 6 a.m. Nothing fits completely. As for what Frank thinks, I will discuss that in Wednesday's live chat. I thoroughly look forward to discussing this with you on Wednesday, August 20th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope to see you there. Feel free to leave comments below to give me an idea for what lies ahead tomorrow night. Thanks to Anthony for letting me do this. Thanks to my producer, Frankie C, for getting me through this. And thanks to you for attending my preview yet again. Good night.